story. Look for word nerds 6 terms in bold. Jeremy feels like the only kid who doesn't have those shoes. By Mary Beth Boltz, art by Noah Z. Jones. Think and read. How a character changes. As you read, think about how Jeremy changes from the beginning of the story to the end. I have dreams about those shoes. Black high tops, 2 white stripes. Grandma, I want them. There's no room for want around here, just need, Grandma says, and what you need are new boots. Brandon T. comes to school in those shoes. He says he's the fastest runner now, not me. I was always the fastest before those shoes came along. Nate comes to school in those shoes. Antonio and I count how many times Nate goes to the bathroom. 7 times in one day, just so he can walk up and down the hall real slow. Next, Alan and Terrence each get a pair. Then one day, in the middle of kickball, one of my shoes comes apart. Looks like you could use a new pair, Jeremy, Mr. Alfrey, the guidance counselor, says. He brings out a box of stuff he has for kids who need things. He helps me find the only shoes that are my size, Velcro, like the ones my little cousin Marshall wears. They have an animal on them from a cartoon I don't think any kid ever watched. When I come back to the classroom, Alan looks at my Mr. Alfrey shoes and laughs, and so does everyone else. The only kid not laughing is Antonio. Pause and think. What happens when Jeremy's shoe comes apart? Shopping for shoes. At home, Grandma says, "How kind of Mr. Alfrey." I nod and turn my back. I'm not going to cry about any dumb shoes. But when I'm writing my spelling words later, my grip is so tight on my pencil, I think it might bust. On Saturday, Grandma says, "Let's check out those shoes." I got a little bit of money set aside. Might be enough, you never know. At the shoe store, Grandma turns those shoes over to check the price. When she sees it, she sits down heavy. Maybe they wrote it down wrong, I say. Grandma shakes her head. Then I remember the thrift shops. What if there's a rich kid who outgrew his, or got 2 pairs for Christmas and gave one of them away? We ride the bus to the first thrift shop. They have every kind of shoes except the ones I want. We ride the bus to the second thrift shop. Not a pair of those shoes in sight. Around the corner is the third thrift shop. In the window, I see black shoes with 2 white stripes, high tops, perfect shape, $2.50. Those shoes. Pause and think. Which stores do Jeremy and Grandma visit? Too tight. My heart is pounding as I take off my shoes and pull up my baggy socks. What size are they? Grandma asks. I shove my foot into the first shoe, curling my toes to get my heel on. I don't know, but I think they fit. Grandma kneels on the floor and feels for my toes at the end of the shoe. "Oh, Jeremy," she says, "I can't buy you shoes that don't fit." I pull the other shoe on and try to walk around. "They're okay," I say, holding my breath and praying that my toes will fall off right then and there. But my toes don't fall off. I buy the shoes anyway with my own money, and I squeeze them on and limp to the bus stop. Pause and think. Why doesn't Grandma buy those shoes? Who buys them for Jeremy? Not going to do it? A few days later, Grandma brings home a new pair of snow boots and doesn't say a word about my too big feet shuffling around in my too small shoes. Sometimes shoes stretch, I say. Grandma gives me a hug. Those shoes don't stretch. I have to wear my Mr. Alfreys to school instead. One day during math, I glance at Antonio's shoes. One of them is taped up and his feet look smaller than mine. After school, I head to the park to think. Antonio is there, the only kid who didn't laugh at my Mr. Alfrey shoes. We shoot baskets. A loose piece of tape on Antonio's shoe smacks the concrete every time he jumps. I think, I'm not going to do it. We leap off the swings. I'm not going to do it. We race across the playground. I'm not going to do it, I say. Do what? Antonio says. Grandma calls me in for supper and invites Antonio over too. After supper, he sees my shoes. How come you don't wear them? Antonio asks. I shrug. My hands are sweaty. I can feel him wishing those shoes were his. Pause and think. What's wrong with Antonio's shoes? The gift. That night, I am awake for a long time thinking about Antonio. When morning comes, I try on my shoes one last time. Before I can change my mind, the shoes are in my coat. Snow is beginning to fall as I run across the street to Antonio's apartment. I put the shoes in front of his door, push the doorbell, and run. At school, Antonio is smiling in his brand new shoes. I feel happy when I look at his face, and mad when I look at my Mr. Alfrey shoes. When it's time for recess, something happens. Everywhere there is snow. Change into your boots, the teacher announces. Change into your boots. I remember what I have in my backpack. New boots that no kid has ever worn before. Standing in line to go to recess, Antonio leans forward and says, "Thanks." I smile and give him a nudge. Let's race. Pause and think. What did Jeremy do with those shoes? Think and